10 years later when my friend Nizam, who was an Afghan commando special forces guy and graduate of our Q course at Fort Bragg,
Wow.
was on the run and was being hunted by the Taliban as the country collapsed in August of 2021. No one was coming. Like, it was astounding to me, but like, here was a guy who had not only graduated from the U.S. or the Afghan version of special forces, he was a Q course graduate. Like, he was part of our regiment. And there was only a handful of those guys, and nobody was even tracking him or trying to get him out. No one thought, wow, what would it mean if ISIS or Iran rolled up a Q course graduate who's an Afghan?
Right. You know,
maybe we should take some risk and get him out. None of that. They didn't even know, they weren't even tracking him as a guy that was on the run. And so it really, for me, I hadn't been in the game in a long time. It was a kind of a shit show in the sense that I didn't really know what to do other than call friends who knew him. And together we just tried to treat it like a remote operation, where you had, okay, we've got dudes on the ground. Who do we know? And, how can we help? Who do we know that can help him move and just keep him safe? How can we just be a lifeline for him? How can we use technology to just collaborate? And when we hear about a checkpoint, is to drop a pin so that we can be his eyes and ears. And that's what we did for about 4 or 5 days without sleeping. And unbeknownst to us, other groups were doing the same thing when those calls came in. And so ultimately, right as he was about to be kicked out and his cell phone was on 10% power, we made a phone call into a phone number that we had been given, like on just a random number. And the first name was JP, and he was a State Department guy. And we thought, okay, well, we don't know him, but if he, theoretically a State Department guy could say, let him in because it's a State Department event.
Yeah.
And we got JP on the line and explained everything. And you could tell he was just exhausted. But when we talked about Nizam going to the Q course, and oh, by the way, he'd been shot through the face defending U.S. Green Berets and went right back into battle 5 weeks later with a set of U.S. made dentures. We told him all this.
Yes.
And JP said, oh, wow, did I tell you guys I was a Green Beret before I was State Department? And no. And he said, okay, they're going to throw him out, but you got to give him the password. And we're like, what's the password? And he said, pineapple. And so we're screaming at him to say pineapple, and he did and got through. Then phones just started blowing up. Once they heard that he got out, other buddies were calling. And so we became Task Force Pineapple. And the mechanism that we used to get guys out was called the Pineapple Express. And over the next 6 days or so, we got around somewhere between 700 and 1,000 out.
Jeez.
With the help, obviously, of active duty members on the airfield. And a lot of other groups did this too. That started, Nick, a process by which a lot of us as former special operators in the global war on terror were brought back into the fold in the wake of a 20-year war. So we found ourselves still on the phone with these allies, with these highly placed commandos and intel operatives that had, 99% of our intel was abandoned by the agency. I'm sorry, but it was. 100% of our partner force was abandoned by the DOD. And now all of a sudden you've got these GWAT veterans who are paying for safe houses. They're paying for babies to be born through midwives. We're doing food drops and medical drops. And moving these guys around like a shell game. And this has gone on for 4 years. And so that's where we are today. And now with all those highly placed resources are now giving high fidelity information to these veterans groups who are storing it on their MacBooks and iPhones. It's like the Twilight Zone.
I mean, that's a great way to put it. It is like the Twilight Zone.